And I'm joined by Mr. Jay Buchanan of Rival Sons. How you doing, Jay?
I'm doing great, Lee.
Great to speak to you, man. It's a real honor to have you on the show, buddy. Obviously, in next Friday as we stand, you guys will release Darkfighter, your brand new album. I've been fortunate enough to sit with the album for a little while now, having that get sent across from Toledo. And this is a stunning record, mate. I'm so glad I've had a few weeks to sort of soak it up properly before getting to speak to you, because I feel like this is a record and an album that really needs immersing in. Some albums are a strong hit, and it was. There was certainly some, hit songs straight away, but I feel like this is an album. The more you listen to it, the more it reveals itself to you. Obviously, with the content and the lyrical side of things and the sort of darker themes of the album as well. I feel like it needs that attention.
Well, I'm certainly glad you enjoy it. I think that we look, we really approached it from a different angle with this record. For myself, the writing through the pandemic, it was a couple of hard years to live through.
Yeah.
And we took a couple of years making this record. That's a ridiculous amount of time to spend making an album. But in some ways, I think that, having gone through so much, I think that it really squeezed me and made me want to go as deep within myself for writing. And I mean, in the best case, that's what you always do. And I think that with every record, there are a couple of songs where I work to do that from my side, my part of our creative output. And I think with Darkfighter in particular, I think that things were getting so crazy. There was definitely a sense of writing my survival,
yeah,
writing my transcendence, writing my fight with that darkness,
I mean, you mentioned there obviously like that darkness that is very apparent on this record, and like you say, there's a different slant to some of your other releases. Was that a conscious decision before the sort of recording process took place, or was it more because you had that time? Do you think that kind of came to the forefront?
I think that when everything began, you have to, to put things into a context. You have to realize that we jumped right into making this collection of songs in the pandemic. As soon as there was a lockdown, at first, okay, we need everybody to stay home and stay indoors, just quarantine for 2 weeks. Everybody quarantines for 2 weeks. We'll all get through this quickly. Well, nobody quarantined for 2 weeks, and so it took 2 years. But like the writing process really kicked in once the isolation started.
Yeah.
And I think that forced introspection really distilled a lot of emotions. You mix that in with all of the issues that were thrown at us through the isolation and through the pandemic and all of that. And in the United States, in particular, we had some heavy trouble in the United States. We had an election year. We had, conspiracy theories just run amok everywhere.
Yeah, man.
And then we had like Black Lives Matter coming up, after that movement coming up out of the unfortunate, brutal murder of George Floyd at the hands of a police officer on camera.
Yeah.
And so then it's like a long overdue movement with Black Lives Matter. But then that being misunderstood, or people, then you having people with the gall to say like, oh, it's really blown out of proportion. We don't have racial profiling and racial bias, in our in correctional facilities or everywhere else in culture. And like, are you fucking kidding me? But you just had people coming out of the woodwork just saying all of this stuff. And then, you know, you have that, and then you have the election, and then you have people, you have the politicalization of the virus itself, you know, or the politicalization of the vaccine, the politicalization of the act of wearing a mask. Like there were so many things. So there was, I think that it, right out of the gate, I think that knowing, I think that there was certainly a sense of writing for my survival, writing my future, writing my survival, and writing my transcendence, you know, and you know, I think that that was apparent, you know, from day one.
I mean, no, you mean, like you're saying, there was a lot going on. I mean, and so much was misinterpreted. It was frustrating. Like the Black Lives Matters movement you mentioned there, my cousin's, she had All Lives Matter sprayed on her hair salon door when she would come up, and she's not. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, how are we still living in a society that their portion thinks that's acceptable behavior? So, yeah, you know. And was there one song in particular when you were going through the writing process, though, that kind of set off the trajectory for the record at all when you were going through that? Or did they sort of?
Yes, I would say. I think that right out of the gate, one of the first songs that we tracked was one of the first songs that I had written, and I brought to the band, and I brought to my partner, Scott. And that's a song called Darkfighter.
Yeah.
And that's the one that closes the album. Like my very closest friend from a very, very young age. Great guy, great father. I'm guessing that he was a great husband, but very trustworthy. You know, I had grown up side by side, going on family vacations together with our families and kids, and everything. Was like my very best friend. He had an injury, you know, years back, and was prescribed some painkillers so that he could continue to go to work and do his job and do these things. Well, out of nowhere, he comes to me, because I was living out in Tennessee and he was in California. We find out that he lets me know that he had a crippling opioid addiction.
Wow.
And you know, and it's just a downward spiral. You know, the opioid crisis here in the United States is killing people all day, every day. Overdoses all day, every day, all across the country. And so I watched the downward spiral of someone that I trusted my life with, and that was my closest, like my ride or die. Watching him, you know, becoming estranged from his family, his kids, everything. And there was a time through 2020, I was made aware of this in late 2019, in August, I suppose. And we tried to get him into rehab and everything, and we did, and all that, but it failed because these drugs are really strong, man. They're really, really strong, and the body becomes so dependent on it.
It does.
So Dark Side was written at a time when, for the first time in my life, I could not reach him. I knew that he was like living out of his car. Nobody knew where he was. This is my best mate. When you love someone who is an addict, when they begin their journey as an addict, you mourn for them. You mourn for them, even though they're still alive. You mourn because you know that they're leaving. And Dark Side was written at a time when I couldn't get a hold of him, and that was very difficult. It was very, very difficult for me. it was even more difficult for his, you know,
his family, yeah.
his wife and his kids and everything. But anyways, this song was written, Dark Side was written at a time when I couldn't reach him. And so I needed to write about this. It's a very personal thing to write about. But I also know that other people go through this. Other people are going through this all the time. You know, whether it's opioids or these prescription drugs, fentanyl, or, you know, it's always been heroin. You know, we've all got junkie friends.
I lost one of my friends to heroin, so I knew, you know, when I listened to the Dark Side, it really did hit home, mate. When you say about losing, you know, you lose that person before they've gone, because like you say, you know, when someone's an addict, then they're not the person you love anymore. That person you love is they're there physically, but you know, they're sort of locked in the basement almost.
Yeah, that's exactly, that's a great way to put it. I always think of it in terms of like, they're in the car, but they're not in the driver's seat. They're bound and tied up in the trunk.
Yeah.
You know, and just being kept alive to be a host of this unquenchable thirst and this unforgiving master. So, you know, and in late 21, I finally lost him, and that was difficult. You know, I appreciate that. But that song was written at a time, you know, I knew that I needed to write about it because it was a very present thing in my life. So I wrote that, and then I gave it to Scott, and I said, this is, I think, you know, this is a good track. And he listened to it, and he was just like, yes. And he turned around and he wrote that monster riff that the song opens with, because Scott was very well acquainted with this friend of mine, and he knew, you know, Scott's had to deal with things like this in his life as well. And so I think he was well acquainted, and he went and he wrote the heaviest riff I've ever heard him write.
It's definitely the heaviest riff I've heard from you guys.
Yeah, it's absolutely the heaviest. And so he went and wrote that just to be a perfect addition to that song. But anyways, getting back to your initial question, that was, I believe, the first song that we finished in the studio early on. So us like getting this process started, getting into the studio and coming in that way.
Yeah.
I knew, like, as soon as we had that recorded, it was just going like, oh no, everything has to change now. We can't go back to the old way. We have to go down this path.
Yeah.
We're being forced to go down this path. And right from wherever that song came from, I have to write from that place.
That makes sense.
And so right after that, I wrote Rapture.
Ah, cool.
And you know, along, you know, with Scott's album. Yeah. And then, you know, there are songs like that are definitely in that vein. You have Rapture, Horse's Breath.
Horse's Breath is one of my favorites on that record.
Dark Side. Those are songs, you know, when I wrote Horse's Breath, it was born out of a very, very difficult struggle. But those are all, I consider those three songs to be sisters, you know, in a way.
So where did Horse's Breath come from, man? Because I say that's definitely a favorite of mine on the album. I just think that's almost out there on its own a little bit in its tonality.
Yeah. Horse's Breath happened when during 2020, during that entire lockdown, going through all of this intense isolation, and a loss of wages. You know, I can't work, and a lot of stress. I'm living out in Tennessee, and I'm writing remotely with my partner Scott, who's out in California. My wife and I found out that we were going to be having another child back in February of 2020. We were just elated. And but as it turned out, you know, a month later in March, we found out, well, nobody's going anywhere, so I'm not going on tour, and everything's going to change. But I was able to be there with my wife through her entire pregnancy, right? The whole thing. And that would never happen. That would never happen any other time. I would always choose to work, because I've got the best job in the world. I love going to work, you know.
Yeah.
But we have some family there's some family health things going on, and we have this new child that's coming. So we know that we need to go back. We need to leave Tennessee and go back to California to raise this child around family, and to take care of, you know, some of these issues, and take care of family that's back out in California. So I gotta turn my whole life upside down. And we got to have the kid. The child was just born. I needed to sell my house in Tennessee, and then I need to buy a place in California, which is the most expensive market in the entire country, in a year when I wasn't making an income. So it was all very, very difficult. And then, and I needed to get the property in Tennessee ready to sell. There's a large property with a lot of foliage and trees, and I couldn't afford to hire out any labor or anything. So I'm going out and I'm putting in farmer's hours during the day, and then trying to take care of my wife and my family, and then staying up all night writing these songs. So it was a very, very stressful time.
That's like a really intense period.
It was a very, 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 very intense period. And all at the same time being a husband and a father, a provider, looking out at an uncertain future, bringing a child into an uncertain future, but still just shoulder to the wheel, because that's what you do. So finally I find this place out in California, and I have to, you know, the child had just been born, and we have to move out to California. And, we can't fly, and even like staying in hotels, all of that with COVID, because like my wife can't get sick, the baby can't get sick, you know, it's like, because the immune system is shot after birth. So then I rent an RV, and we just drive across country. I've got my dogs in the car, I've got my daughter, I've got my baby and my wife, we've got a couple of cats, and we're towing, you know, and getting us across country. We finally land in California, and I've got to unpack everything, and the movers come, and I've got to move everything up this hill. And we finally get to California, and I'm just mentally and emotionally fatigued, and just really stretched, but still I'm okay. I'm just, you get fatigued when you live in crisis mode for too long. And so late one night, the family had all gone to bed, and I'm walking around the house, and there are boxes everywhere, because we hadn't been in the house for very long. And there's a little bit of rain, and I can hear the rain coming down this downspout, and it's like drip, 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 and it's a certain cadence, and I'm listening to it. I sit there, and I can tell that something's coming.
Yeah.
And so then I go and I pour myself a bourbon, and I just sit and I listen to it. And I go and I grab my guitar right away, and I have to go into the bathroom downstairs to sing very quietly. Yeah. Because we have a baby in the house, and so I wrote the entire thing. I wrote the entire thing minus that guitar riff that comes in. But I wrote this song inside of, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes.
Wow.
And it's funny when I go back and I listen to it, and it's just, I'm singing very quietly. You can hear the rain as loud as my voice. You can hear the dripping. But it was really about, Horse's Breath was really just about You can't, you can't turn around. I had brought my family out here. I was doing this, all of the economic stress and the everything that I was jumping into. I was just worn out, and I wanted to, on Horse's Breath, I wanted that song to stand apart from the other songs.
Yeah.
And so I wanted there to be, that psychedelic introduction at the beginning and at the end. It's so that you are leaving, so to give you the sense that you're going into another realm, that you're going into another dimension, or you're going into a story. And I wanted to create that long psychedelic introduction, so that you would be distanced from the previous songs and just go somewhere completely different, almost, like a rebirth.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the song, same thing, a long transition.
That's cool. I mean, I know recently you spoke to a good friend of mine, Ryan of Beyond the Vibe podcast, and Ryan, and obviously Ryan's also been, fortunate enough to hear the album, and we're both huge fans of you. And so we can't really talk about it to anyone else because no one else has heard it yet. So we were talking about tracks on the album and the rest of it, and one song that we sort of agreed that, and I don't know if you are releasing any other singles off the album, but Bright Side came out a lot as a track that we really thought was really strong. I mean, are you planning on releasing any other singles or anything, or are you letting the album speak for itself? Because conceptually, it's quite a whole piece.
Yeah, I think that we'll likely just release the album. I don't know that we'll work any other singles. Bright Light is that was probably that was written right around the same time as Dark Side.
Okay.
Before Rapture was written. Scott and I were both writing on baritone guitars. I was writing on a baritone 8-string acoustic, and he was writing on his baritone electric acoustic. So he sent over these tracks, and it was just great. He already had the chorus. He had that chorus, those great guitars.
Yeah.
That, the vibrato that was on the or the tremolo guitars in the chorus, and that chorus already sounded great musically. And then he had the verses, and so I listened to it, and I knew I liked it.
Yeah.
And so I wrote, and then I needed to, I wanted more time in the verses, and I wanted more movement.
Okay.
And so I wrote some transitions, and then that long acoustic pre-chorus, that talking about, being a victim of a victimless crime.
I love that lyric.
Yeah, just really because when you're doing yourself wrong, nobody else knows.
Yeah.
So, but that one, I was very pleased when I wrote the chorus lyrics and melodies and everything. I sent it back to him. It was nice. That was one that came together. We knew that we had a good track that was uplifting. That Bright Light was going to be a good, a song that was going to feel good to play, because we knew that we had some dark side. We knew that we had this other stuff. And it's good. There's going to be some levity there.
That's cool, man. I mean, obviously you were talking earlier about how, this album's taken a little longer than some previous releases. I did wonder how did that affect how you were working with Dave Cobb? Because obviously Dave's done most of your records.
He's done all of our records, yeah.
Yeah. And then so obviously some of the other albums have been recorded in a relatively short period of time. So it's where you had the sort of time to sort of expand and work on those. Did that affect how the working ethics that David had worked with you previously on, or?
I think that, we probably wore Dave Cobb out with always needing to record a little bit more and things getting spaced out. And not only that, but, it was a more difficult record to make because we really wanted to push things and push ourselves, you know, and there were certainly a lot of arguments just within the band, and there was a lot of tension, and there was more tension on this record. This was a more difficult record to make, more arguments and everything than any other record, because I certainly felt that, like, this is the one we need to, well, things were just closer to the bone.
Yeah, of course. It sounds like there's a lot more personal writing on this record.
A lot more personal writing, and I felt that I was, for my part of our writing, there was definitely a sense of trying to write my future, of truly writing my life, you know, and trying to write my own victory, and trying to write and compose my own victory over the darkness that seemed to be coming from all angles, you know.
Yeah.
And hence the name Darkfighter. But and so it was very personal to me, and because of that, I was very protective of a lot of the statements, you know, that were being made, and so there was a lot to grapple with there. And, you know, I'm sure Cobb, I know it was a lot for him to deal with, but, you know, thankfully he's an amazing producer, and he's an amazing friend as well. We're definitely family by this time. And yeah, so the approach changed. With this record. But you know, having worked with Dave, by the time Lightbringer comes out in October, like, that makes 9 records with Dave Cobb.
Wow.
You know, and we've worked together. We've made all of them with him. He's family, and he understands us, you know. And yeah, I'm thankful. I'm thankful for his involvement in these records, you know.
I bet, man. I bet. So, like you say, he's a hell of a producer, and obviously working on you throughout all your records. Just not often you find that kind of working relationship. Sometimes it's not easy.
Yeah.
Cool. But obviously, like, for me, I've always thought of you guys as a band that, you know, are constantly looking forward, constantly looking in the now. And then obviously last year you did your Pressure in Time anniversary tour, which I came to see at the show in Norwich. And just ahead of that tour, I spoke to Scott. So I was fortunate enough to have Scott on the show. So I know that you guys were sort of already fully in sort of midst of working on these collection of songs, and obviously the recording process. How did you find, like, obviously being focused on the new material and this forthcoming albums with Darkfighter and Lightbringer, but whilst also all looking back and, you know, performing the Pressure in Time tracks live?
Well, I won't be in a hurry to do that again. I'll tell you that much. It was the fucking worst. It was the worst. Here's why. Pressure in Time is a great record. It really is, you know, and and that's a record that did a lot for us. Pressure in Time was, we made the record we needed to make at that time, for sure. And we did it very quickly. Hence the title, you know, the album. But to put on that old identity and wear that identity, when I knew that we had songs like Dark Side and Rapture just waiting, you know, and all of this new expansive statement from the band, where we were working so hard to push really far out beyond the pale for us, to push the boundaries of our vocabulary, you know, in our catalog. We didn't reinvent the wheel with this album, you know, but we reinvented part of ourselves.
Yeah.
And but to know that that all of that growth was happening, and then to go back and and play these very, very old songs, it was difficult, man. It was a fucking head fuck. But we also, people love that record. And we had planned to do that in 2020. We had planned to, okay, we're going to go back out, we'll play this album in its entirety, because we knew that the fan base would like to see that.
Yeah.
But I think the idea of going out and playing an entire record, like we had thought about doing it for Head Down, and Head Down is a fantastic record. But just thinking like, we're just not, it seems dangerous to live in the past so much.
I appreciate that.
While we are, we're trying to innovate within our, like I said, within our vocabulary. We're working hard to innovate. So, but yeah, that was a weird one. Thanks for coming to the show in Norwich.
No. Well, I was at Norwich a few years prior as well, when unfortunately you were ill, I seem to remember.
Oh God.
And having to leave the state. You came back.
Yeah.
But yeah,
yeah.
Like me and my wife were quite far down the front when you guys were playing. And I remember it's about the second or third song in, and I turned to my wife and said, Jay's not right here. You could tell that you're suffering up there, man.
No, I was losing. I think I was having a very acute anxiety attack.
See, sometimes they're so debilitating. I've had those in the past.
Yeah, and but I was not familiar with that. And so I'm on stage and I'm trying to focus, and I can't. And it's suddenly that feeling of imminent danger, and feeling outside of yourself. I don't feel like I'm present. In music, when we're on stage, for me, it's all about being completely present. Not like, never like intoxicating on stage. I mean, I'll have like a little glass of whiskey for a 2-hour show, make that last, and that won't make a dent. But for me, being very, very present is what it's all about. And suddenly being in this zone where I'm not even here, to a sold out audience, the last show of the tour, I'm not even there. My body's there. I'm not. What? And that's when I knew, like, I don't know what's going on right now. I don't know what's going on, but I can't do this, And it freaked me the fuck out. It was like the worst time on stage ever.
Well, is that the only time you've experienced something like that on stage? I mean, that must have been pretty. I haven't had that experience before.
That's the only time that's ever happened to me. And I went backstage, and it took me a long time to just cool down. I went back trying to meditate, just trying to, but it was the worst. It was scary. But thankfully that's never happened. I think that I was probably burning the candle at both ends a little bit too hard. And maybe I wasn't treating my body very good at that time, So, I cleaned my act up after that.
We've all been there. We've all but like I say, burn that candle too hard and you learn from it at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I reached the end of the rope.
I remember when you came back the following tour and came back to Norwich, you guys did like a bluesgrass set in the middle with like Dave West on double bass and Scott on a slide and Mikey on a cigar box, and that was just really cool. I really, really enjoyed that bit of the set, man. That was wicked.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I remember like one of the things I was going to say to you, talking about sort of performance side of things. For me, like watching you always seemed on another level. You get some frontmen that I adore. I'm a big fan of Aerosmith. So you get like the Steven Tylers of this world, who's like the formidable peacock, who's just out there on that side of things. But you seem to be going on beyond just being a cool rock and roll frontman. Like it seems such a personal thing for you when you're performing. Like Like, where do you go in your headspace? Is it just solely focusing on what those songs invoking you, or do you
Yeah, I
do
think
meditation thing, or
it's an interesting thing. I think that as soon as the band got together, I found myself with the role of being a rock frontman.
Hmm.
And I looked at it and I just thought, like, right away, like looking at a Steven Tyler,
Hmm.
who's brilliant, and
Yeah.
looking at a Mick Jagger, who was brilliant,
Hmm.
but looking at that and going like, that's not me.
Yeah.
That's not me at all. That's not why I make music. I'm an artist, and because I'm an artist, I became an entertainer.
Yeah.
But the entertainment aspect, that's like the music and like the vulnerability and honesty and all of these things come first. Entertainment's like way down the list. Make this the music has to have heart, and the performance of the music is auditory before it's visual.
Hmm.
And so for me, being on stage and performing, it's about perform and sing this song as if this is the last time you will ever be on stage, as if this is the last night you will ever have a voice, you know, um, every time, every time on stage. That's it. But it's for me tapping into it's about going as far as I can within.
Yeah.
As far as I can within, and just leaving myself open and hollow for whatever that energy is or wherever it comes from. Just leaving myself open to be able to channel such a great energy. Music is just so, it's just magic, right? It's just so, like nothing else does anything close to what music does.
That does.
And it's like and it's completely surrendering myself to that. And if from the visual aspect, man, I see pictures of myself on stage and I look so stupid, but like I just don't give a fuck, because it's like I'm there to do, I'm gonna get my job done, you know? And like the other guys in the band, they have guitars and instruments to hide behind or to wield. And for me, it's just a bunch of pictures with like a triple neck. Like, okay, well, that's my life. But I think as an artist, you just kind of end up, you got to make the decision on who you're going to serve and what you're going to serve. So
You guys,
it's
like, generally have always seemed like to me a band that are always just going to serve the song and serve that.
yeah,
That's
yeah. It's like there's form's got to follow function. For
yeah.
me, and like that's just how it is. And I enjoy singing, and so I just try to commit, just fully commit.
It amazes me that your voice is still there though, man, because obviously you give it, like you say, you give it all every single night I've ever seen you. I've
Yeah,
never seen you give anything less. And obviously, some songs are soft and whatever, but the vocals are never soft. The vocals are always seeming to be, very hard, especially over like the course of the set. There's a lot of stuff that you would see, I don't know, maybe some people try and tone it down, like going back. I know you didn't like looking back, but some of the vocals on like Face a Light on, then the when you did the Pressure and Time tour, that must have been hell on your voice doing that kind of thing. But
yeah, it was difficult, but I when it comes to writing music, I never, and man, I should learn, but like like on Darkfighter,
mm,
you take songs like Mirrors or
yes,
Guillotine. Guillotine is the most punishing song I've ever sang. And going like, wow, this far into our career, why did I do that to myself? But you serve the song, And it's that pressure and it's that tension that comes from that anguish, you know, that serves those lyrics, that serves that song. And so for me, now that we're playing it, like, it's really difficult, but I don't know. I'll make do. I'll make it work. I don't know. And it always seems to work out, you know, it always seems to work out. Like on the Feral Roots album, having a song like Look Away, or a song like Back in the Woods. These are songs that are way the fuck up there. Or Stood By on that album. These are songs that are at the top of my range, if not above my range, you know. But they sound good. They sound good at that key, in that key. And just figure it out later. And so that's what I do. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe one of these days I'll wise up.
You don't seem too sure on that.
I don't. If there's one thing I know about myself, it's that I'll, you know, I probably won't play it safe, and I'll always go about it the dumb way.
It's going about it your way though, mate, and the songs that you write in this album is absolutely killer. Like you say, you're talking about you're doing some shows already in the States, and now in October, you're coming over to the UK and Europe. I'll be at the Cambridge show on that run of dates, so I'm looking forward to it, man. Can't wait to see you again.
All right, yeah, that's fantastically. I'm looking forward to getting over there, man. We, you know, I miss the UK, and we got to jump over there to London just for a couple of days, Scott and I, when we were doing a press trip a few weeks back, and it was just really nice. It was really nice to be able to walk the streets a little bit and to see some friends that we love there. So it was nice, but it just whet my appetite. You know, I want to get back over there.
Obviously, Lightbringer's on its way as well. We mentioned that. Obviously, you described Lightbringer as being the sort of the sister album, the sort of the opposite, almost the other side of the coin, if you like, to what's on Darkfighter. But for those of who are looking forward to Darkfighter, haven't heard it yet, how would you describe Lightbringer on the other side of that coin? What can people sort of expect from that?
Oh, shit. Well, it is a sister record, but it's you know, in partitioning them, putting them a couple of months apart. What's interesting is, you know, you're gonna sit with Darkfighter for a couple of months, and like what you said, which I think is spot on, that you said as you absorb it, it takes on more significance.
Definitely.
As you sit with it, you're able to, oh, wait a minute. And I think that's what a lot of people are going to end up saying about it. But they said the same thing about Feral Roots. You know, that's what I was told. Like, the more you sit with it, actually, there's more to it. Then there's more to it in the subtext than at face value. I think that the first track on Lightbringer is going to provide context for the collection, Dark Side, and it's the collection of Darkfighter. Sorry. Yeah. I think that immediately you're going to be given that. And then the way that Lightbringer is no less dense, it may be even more dense than Darkfighter is.
Okay.
It may be. I can't wait. I can't wait for that one to be out there. To have the statement completed.
Yeah, have a fuller picture of the whole.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And, and I'm looking forward to playing those songs as well.
Did you initially intend to have such a grandeur piece of work for this collection of songs that ended up getting split up? Or was that something that just sort of ended up happening throughout the writing process?
I think both of these albums being a product of their time, being a product of the crazy living that we went through, you know, in those couple of years. I think the operative from the beginning was just to write songs that were close to the bone and to not retread any path that we had taken before. I think that was the sole commitment between Scott and I. And so that was priority one. I think that as things went on, there was more to write about. There were more things to, heavy topics, you know. There was more to purge in a way. And no, we didn't set out to like make 2 records. That was never part of the discussion. And in fact, we tried to be economical about our albums, because like long records, they can just be too taxing. When you see it next to your other albums, sometimes, you know, you look at a great double album and you go like, yeah, I don't have the headspace to listen to that big thing right now. Like, nah, it's too much. That's too much of a commitment. And most of my favorite albums they clock in just over 30 minutes or so. Most of my very favorite records. Yeah. But we knew that we were going to need to partition these up, and you know, we didn't want to make a double album. We wanted one to be released and then have a refractory period, so that it wouldn't be binged, so that each record could be appreciated in its own, you know, being given its own release date and its own time. I think we felt that was important, but no, things ended up that way. It just came together that way. And yeah, so I'm happy that we were able to pull it together to release 2 different records.
That's great, man. Jay, thank you so much for your time, dude. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to hearing what Lightbringer brings. I'm loving this Darkfighter record, mate. I really am. I'll see you in Cambridge when you guys come over for the UK tour. I'll be down for that. Just one more question before you go. At the beginning of the interview, I'm going to play Horse's Breath, because we spoke about that quite a bit. It's one of my favorites. We're going to air this interview on the album release day, so we can play Horse's Breath. But what song off the album would you like us to play at the end of the interview?
Oh goodness, I'd say we talked about all the songs. Let's see, Horse's Breath. Well, you had said that you took a shine to Bright Light.
Yeah.
Did you like that song? Great, yeah. Play Bright Light. My natural instinct is to go to the song that comes right after it, and that's Dark Side.
Yeah.
That's a heavy song. But I don't know. Either one. You could play Bright Light.
All right, buddy. Thanks for your time, Jay. I really appreciate it, man. It's been an absolute joy speaking to you. And like I say, I'll see you in Cambridge, man.
All right, we'll see you in Cambridge. Great to talk with you, Lee. Thanks, buddy.
Cheers, buddy.